Wherever you might be, just happy to have y'all here with us and talking about something that I really like talking about is, just kind of how we can let go and of that common phrase that we always hear of this is how we've always done it, right? Um, Leadership, it continues to evolve and continues to evolve in response to everything that's going on in the world, whether that be technological or societal shifts. And so, as leaders, we have to be able to adapt with that. And we have to be able to lead people to have that adaptation, right? So, we have these unprecedented challenges and these opportunities that I would say that will force us to reshape our leadership viewpoints and our practices. It essentially becomes, as leaders, we have the wonderful privilege to make ourselves aware and to try to stay above the curve and to adapt our approaches and meet the demands of all those changes that are happening around us, which becomes very difficult. One of the biggest challenges as leaders that we're facing essentially is to help ourselves really and others let go of that fixed mindset phrase of this is how we've always done it, right? So really this is about fostering a culture that allows for us to continue to grow, that allows for our employees, our peers to continue to grow and develop and learn from their failures, right? I mean, that's a word that not many people like. My daughter brought home one of her spelling tests and she got a 60 on it, right? In our mind, that was a failure. But we need to look at that and say, okay, you failed this test, and maybe rephrase it, be like, what can we do better to prepare you for this test, right? Since then, she's gotten 90s and 100s because I had to change how I was helping her with that, right? So that failure phrase and that term has coined such this negative response that as leaders, we don't want to acknowledge really that we fail because maybe we're scared of how that might look, how people might take that. But when we fail, it allows us the opportunity to grow, right? So really embracing that culture of learning, growth, and failure. And really as leaders fostering a space that allows for that growth and development. And then, allows for our peers and our employees to say, you know what, I feel safe enough in this environment to explore, to try, to have an opportunity to try something new where maybe that does fail. A great example of this, I was at my daughter's basketball practice and I played in college. She's never touched a basketball. I did her wrong. So she picked up a basketball for the first time. I'm at her practice and all I wanted to do, Macklin, don't do, Macklin, this, Macklin, do that. My child came over to me and she says, Mom, you're not my coach. I said, ooh, you're right. I had to take a step back and say, okay, you know what my child needs in this time is not me hovering over her, micromanaging every move that she makes, but allowing her the environment to grow on her own, learn and develop from her coach, not mama coach on the side, right? And so it's being able to realize when you're in those moments and being able to step back from those situations and say, okay, I need this to be a space that's supportive, that is non-judgmental, but more importantly, allows for the autonomy for those individuals to take ownership, right? Oh, skip the side. Sorry. To allow for those to allow them to have those opportunities to take ownership of what they're doing, right? At the end of the day, it's not about me, but it's essentially maybe about the opportunity that my employees, maybe my children, maybe my husband, what that might be, but allow them to make their own mistakes, right? And be there for that support and be there for that guidance. So really today, I really want to dive into, of course, this phrase, but let's let it go, right? Let's take that phrase off of our shoulders. Let's not even try to use that phrase again. And so here we go. Great idea. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. If you are probably in my generation, I am 36. You probably know it very well. If you don't know this movie, please go watch it. It is called Office Space. But essentially, great idea, but we've always done it that way. This is something I know every single one of us has either heard or has been guilty of saying, and probably both, right? If we're going to be honest with ourselves. This attitude really comes and stems from a carelessness, oftentimes, fear, a lot of the times, even unwillingness or even ignorance at this point, like why are we still doing the things that we've always done it before, right? If we've been doing the same thing for 10 years and the world around us, the people around us have changed, grown and developed, then you're probably not where you need to be for your customers or your members or even your employees. So when we resist the process of change, we might miss new opportunities that will allow us to stay competitive and to increase our impact, right? So let me say that again. When we resist change or even that process of change, we may miss opportunities to grow, to develop, but also to stay competitive. So how many times have we heard this phrase tossed around in meetings, brainstorming sessions, or even casual conversations at work? Down to those casual conversations at work, it matters. That sets the tone for the culture. That sets the tone for your work environment, right? It might seem harmless, almost comforting sometimes. Oh, well, why are we doing this? Well, we've always done it that way. Okay, cool. Now I know why I'm doing it, right? But in reality, that is one of the most dangerous mindsets an organization or an individual can have. So what I would like to do is in the chat, if you could write similar phrases that maybe you've heard in meetings or that maybe you've been guilty of doing it yourself, right? So what are similar phrases that we've constantly heard around, let's just go with change?
While we are waiting for some comments, Chelsea, I will get us started with one. Well, Crystal just stole it. If it's not broken, why fix it? So thank you, Crystal. We've already tried and it didn't work.
Yeah.
That's not my job.
I like that one. That's not my job.
It has worked for years, so why should we change it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have sparked a nerve, Chelsea. Don't reinvent the wheel. We have some good ones coming in. We're comfortable with this method.
Yeah, right. We're comfortable. We've always done it this way. Why change things when it's working, right? It might be working. But the issue is when everything else is evolving around us and we want to continue to do good work and we want to continue to be competitive in the market that you might be in, we're going to have to address this issue. You're going to have to change some things, right? Because when we cling to the familiar, we limit ourselves. That's it. We limit ourselves to grow. We limit ourselves to adapt. And because of that, we limit ourselves to thrive. The belief that we've always done it this way is a silent killer of innovation and creativity and even progress. Because as soon as you say that, you're done, right? That is your mindset. It is fixed. What I'm hoping you will get out of this is probably being able to recognize when you're in that mindset or when you acknowledge or you can acknowledge when someone else is in that mindset. So when you're hearing those phrases that you all just typed in the chat, that is a sign that your team, maybe even yourself, your peers, whoever it might be, that is a sign that they are either resistant, fearful, they don't understand it. It is a time to explore and ask questions and talk about the why, right? We don't want to have walls around our thinking. We want to encourage our experimentation. And we have to have that culture and foster that culture itself where we are free and have the autonomy to do those things, to challenge ourselves, to challenge the status quo, or to reinvent the wheel and maybe take what works from that wheel, but change what we can do better, right? So when we talk about change, we're not just talking about redoing everything from scratch. We're talking about even maybe micro movements of this is working, but there are still ways that we can make it better, right? So just to give y'all a few examples, we've probably all heard of these businesses, and one of the most interesting examples is Kodak. This was a technology company that once dominated the film industry, right? And so in 1975, one of their own engineers actually created the first digital camera. Kodak had the opportunity to lead that digital revolution, but they were so focused on the success of the film itself, not the digital, not the camera, but the film, that they refused to launch this new product. They were too late when they decided to launch this project, and they suffered in the market. If you didn't know this too, Kodak they were on the top, then they fell, and then they have been trying to reinvent themselves drastically to the point where they started trying to make pharmaceutical things during COVID. So, I mean, they truly lost themselves in trying to figure out what they need to do in order to get back on top. And if you think about it, if they had just had a different mindset about that digital camera that someone in-house developed a prototype for, their future might have been way different, right? The other one that we think about is Sears. Sears, it was a digital transformation too that ultimately impaired their progress in growth and development, right? So they were very slow to adapt to the changing consumer habits like new technologies and e-commerce. Blockbuster, I remember growing up and we would go to Blockbuster every Friday and pick out a new family movie, or we'd pick out a new game. Their failure to adapt to, again, emerging technologies and changing consumer behaviors played a crucial role in their decline. They failed to recognize the opportunity that the internet and the digital technology could play, and how really now it's transformed everything that we do. All we have are all of these streaming services, right? Even Redbox, right? I think Redbox was it Redbox? Yeah. That really replaced Blockbuster, and you could go rent your DVD or your Blu-ray. Now we don't even really have those either. The next one is MySpace. Yay. Again, I might be dating myself, but if you had a MySpace, we all know we all had one friend in common, and his name was Tom, right? So they were slow to adapt. They had a great idea. They had a great product, but their issue is they were slow to adapt, right? And then we had Facebook, who has continued to evolve. And then we've had Instagram, same thing. They make constant changes and upgrades of what they do. And then, just thinking about this, they all had a kind of common theme here. They had an opportunity to change. They were leading in their area. They were leading. Kodak, Sears, Blockbuster, MySpace. We've heard of these businesses because they were doing well, but where they failed was they didn't adapt. They might have looked at things, well, we're doing great in the film industry, so we're going to keep it that way, right? We're not going to change anything we do, right? That limited them, and now you see it, like we have an empty Sears building here that's been here for years in the Columbus area. So, having that mindset, it's not necessarily, again, going back to creating something from the ground up. It's where are the areas we need to improve to keep up with everything that's going on, right? An example of this that I'm personally going through right now is, as Bree said, my husband and I own a gym. Don't ever go into business with your spouse. It's great. But we're managing. We have been using the same gym system for 3 years, whenever we took the gym over itself. 3 years, it's been working. It's been going well. It's been, from the most part, meeting the needs for me, meeting the needs of my members. And I kid you not, for probably 2 years, I have been dodging a call from a sales rep from a different different gym software, to the point I have answered my phone and they ask for the owner, and I tell them Matt Powell's not available at this time because I don't want to have the conversation. One day I decided to hear him out. I did a demo. Y'all, what I was missing out on was so much. And the only reason I decided I didn't want to do it, I didn't even give my staff the option. I didn't really give my husband the option. I didn't really give my members the option. I just decided I didn't want to do it. I was very selfish mentality because of all the extra work and time that it was going to take. I am in that process now. I don't regret it yet. We'll check in January to see, but essentially it is better for it makes life easier for my staff, honestly, for me, when we get to that point, but also my members. So looking back, I've always done it this way. I don't need to change it, but the change is going to allow my gym and my members to have more options at the palm of their hand in their phone. It's going to allow them to sign in to the gym through their phone. It's going to allow them to pay through an app. It's going to allow them to have workouts through the app. So all this time, probably 2 years ago, I could have had this already in place, but here I am, right? I say this because don't hold off on doing something different because you're afraid of the change or you're afraid of the amount of work that is going to go into that. Because I would not want to look up your organization and be talking about you in my next failure to let go of how we've always done it, right? Because I will. This is how I found these companies, right? So I don't think you really want that for your future. Do I have any questions right now, Bree?
No, we don't have any questions in the chat, but I like the failure friends that you brought up. And when you started to talk about missing out on that opportunity, I thought about Netflix.
Yeah.
It was the mailing of DVDs, and at some point, DVDs were stopped being purchased. So they had to pivot and figure out what was next. So I don't know much about how they made that pivot or the history behind it, but that's an example of looking at the landscape and trying to figure out how we can stay relevant and look at them today. So go ahead, Chelsea.
That's a great example, Bree, that I didn't even think of at this point, but I think that's a great example of a company that was doing something that worked, but then they needed to pivot and how they have been able to pivot successfully, right? I mean, just about, I would be curious of the percentage of everyone that has a Netflix account, but I do. And I do it for different shows. They're making movies now. So I thank you for bringing that example up, because I think that's a really great one of someone that had an issue, but then decided to pivot and adapt, right? And so Netflix didn't fall into the trap, right? This is what I'm calling them. Let's not fall into these traps, because the mindset often stems from fear of how we think about change and our resistance or hesitation for it. The fear of change, the fear of failure, and even sometimes the fear of success, right? And I say that because, I think about this as a small business owner. If I'm wildly successful, knock on wood, one can only hope, right? But if I'm wildly successful, there's going to come a time where I might not have the capacity to house everything in the gym, right? Or house everyone. So there comes that fear too, right? But we can always adapt. We can always pivot, as Bree brought up, right? And then a lot of times, and I think I mentioned this earlier, with change comes a lot more work. And you're having to learn new things. You're having to kind of reprogram yourself and take yourself out of these habits. This will actually stop a lot of people, just like it did me. I'm an example of this, from changing something, even though we probably should. It's because the work. I mean, I dodged a call for 2 years because I knew it was going to be a huge task. I have like 500 members. I need to get all 500 members a new key card. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take and potentially lose their contact information. But you got to sometimes trust the people that are helping you, right? And so working hand by hand with this new system, they've been a great support for me, and they're there to answer my calls when I am panic. And one time I called them to like bring me back off of the bridge because it was a lot, right? But trust the people that you're putting in place next to you to help you with this. It's hard, right? It's comfortable to stick with what we know every day. And as I said this again, the common phrase here, the common lingo is that evolving, right? We are evolving faster and faster than ever before, I feel like. And what's good enough today is unlikely good enough tomorrow. And that's okay. That's okay. And it's natural, and it's something that I think as leaders, we need to expect and prepare for. But here's the thing, we need to expect and prepare not only us, but prepare those around us, right? Prepare those that the change is going to impact. So for me, I'm preparing my staff, I'm preparing my husband, I'm preparing my members, I'm preparing my personal trainers, my coaches, anyone where I feel like this change is going to impact them. I'm preparing with them now. I'm already answering questions. And sometimes it's okay to say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but we will figure it out and I will get back to you, right? It's something we need to prepare for. A lot of times people resist change or, want to stay with the status quo is the control that they have. Change poses a threat to the amount of control that we might feel at work. You see that happen a lot of times when someone knows how to do something, like only one person in your organization knows how to run a particular software, right? They might not want that change because if other people know how to do it, well, where do I fit in, right? That might be what they start thinking of. And it's not necessarily you are trying to make this change or have more people know the process, but maybe it might come from, well, Bree has a great skill set and I want her to be able to utilize that skill set in other areas. So let me take this off her plate. Let's share that, or let me find a better system to do that. The biggest thing here is communication, right? If you are changing the way someone does their work or how they input information or anything like that, I tell you, their immediate thought is going to be like, well, if I'm not doing this anymore, they're not going to be able to utilize me. Talk to them, walk them through it, let them know that maybe this is an opportunity for them to grow and develop and learn new skill sets, right? Let's grow and evolve and adapt them. So in control, you have to remember that, right? When we're looking at work and we're looking at jobs and the daily tasks, usually those are assigned with an individual. Make sure you are preparing and not neglecting that individual for that change, but helping them be on board and helping them understand that this is actually probably going to be a really good thing for them that allows them to have more freedom and more autonomy to do something they might really enjoy doing. Okay. The other thing that I talked about is the extra work. And this is the most popular reason why we are so hesitant to change a lot. Because in the beginning, it's more work, but also more energy, right? More time and more resources in general. It's a lot, and we can be overwhelmed by the amount that we start thinking of, all the tasks that come with it. Also, we are moving places we're moving from one warehouse to another in the next month and a half. And it is a lot of work. And we really are just kind of in it now. But what we've decided to do is just make a schedule, whether we try to stay on that schedule or not, or sorry, not whether we try to, I'd love to stay on schedule, but whether we are on that schedule or not, we can change things. But for us, all right, week 1, here are the things that need to get done. Week 2, here are the next things that need to get done, and kind of work from there. Because when we think of something, that requires a lot of change and a lot of extra work, we don't even want to start because of it. So kind of divvy it out, right? Delegate. Who can you bring in? Who can you bring in to help you? How can you divide up those tasks so it's like one day at a time, right? One step up the mountain. Because yeah, it's going to take more work, but if we are very resourceful and we use our time wisely and we plan for that, then it will make it easier day to day. Okay. So, and then, it provides results in the past. Again, we've talked about this. What I'm doing works. Great. Let's look at Blockbuster. What I'm doing works right now. It's provided results in the past. Will it always? Probably not, right? We need to start thinking about this and we need to prepare for this, right? What we're doing now might work. But again, here's the question. How can we make it better? How can we evolve this current process that we're doing to make it better? For me, it was our current process is our sign-in system and billing system for our members. Great. I give each one a key swipe. They lose it all the time. How can I make that better? Well, what would make it better is what's the one thing everyone has when they come to the gym or anywhere you go? Their phone. If I can have everything on their phone and it is a one-stop shop for everything, well, I guarantee you it's going to be easier for them to update their billing information. I'm probably going to have less declines monthly because they're able to do that. They don't have to call me, who sometimes pretends she's not the owner, so I don't have to handle problems. Or so on my end, I'm probably going to get more revenue. So I feel like it's a win-win for everyone, right? So you have to think about, even though it's provided results in the past, how can it be better, right? And how can we transform our status quo and what we're doing that works, but transform it into, okay, well, it works, but it's that much better, right? It's transforming the core of our business. It is making life easier for our employees, for our members, for your staff, for your team, and for everyone involved, and ultimately for yourself too. And we get trapped in this because of these habits that we form, right? I mean, hopefully you have heard of this experiment, but essentially a group of scientists put 5 monkeys in a cage, and in the middle, there was a banana at the top of the ladder. Right? When one monkey went up to go get the banana, the rest of them got sprayed with cold water. Same thing kept happening. But what the scientists started doing is they started they started taking out one of the monkeys and putting in a new monkey, right? That new monkey would go up, and before he could even get up, the other monkeys would beat him up because they knew if he went up there, cold water would be sprayed on them. And then they interchanged the second, a third, and fourth. And this kept happening until it got to the point we had 5 new monkeys that have never actually been sprayed with cold water. But when they tried to go up the ladder, they were pulled back down. And they were pulled back down. So they did it to the next monkey and the next monkey to the point you don't even know why you're doing it anymore. We often fall into that because we have these habits. We have these work habits. Right? To the point where it's like, well, we've always done it this way, but why? Why are we doing it this way? Well, I don't really know why. So this is an opportunity to explore. Having habits helps people organize themselves so we don't need to make decisions every day. So it makes our lives a little easier, right? We know this is what we're doing. My daughter wakes up every day. She has oatmeal. I wake up every day. And my husband, he knows the coffee's going to be on, right? We have these habits, so it eliminates these everyday decisions. They simplify processes and they become a repetition of tasks and activities that do contribute to the overall goal, right? But we don't typically question why we're doing it. Okay, well, let's start to do that. Why are we doing this? Who implemented this? How has it been going? How have you been tracking that? What should we stop doing? What should we keep doing? But what should we start doing too, right? So, just kind of having that in mind. If you don't know why you're doing something and why you've always done it that way, start digging in, start asking. And if you don't know why, then just reassess it all yourself as a team and develop a new way to do it. And let's call that team bonding, team building. You're bonding with each other and you're developing something new. Okay.
I like
Um,
the way you phrase that, Chelsea, and turning it into team bonding, because I think that something very similar is happening with AI and this technology and the sense of losing control because that's going to take my job away. So you bring up some good points. Communication is key. Making sure that you are looping in, everyone in the process,
yeah,
explaining it, breaking down the change into, uh, digestible, action steps. So I think that those are all good points. And Catherine here says that all change involves a sense of loss, even if you want that change. So it's important to recognize that when you're in these small groups, because you are going to have that fear. So just remembering that all change has some sense of loss involved in it can really help, just bring the team together and help to, explore some commonalities
yeah.
around how everyone is feeling.
Yeah, Catherine, you nailed it. It's lost. You're grieving something that you've done before, and it's hard. And I think the one thing that we always will have, even in the AI world, that in the technology that we're finding, is the human emotion. That we have that. And when we are working with people, that loss, we need to make sure as leaders that we are recognizing with our team and with our staff that yes, I'm asking you to change and grow and develop. We all are, but recognizing that it might be and will be at some point in time difficult. Emotions are tied with this, right? So that's how we want to start thinking about this and fostering a culture of change, is knowing that, okay, I'm okay with this change because I know I'm supported and I know I am in a safe place to express any thoughts, concerns, ask questions, because we have to remember that we have the emotions tied to it. So, kind of looking at that is um being able to provide nurturing that risk taking and nurturing and providing that ongoing feedback and communication and recognizing, just as Catherine said, the loss, but also anger that might be tied with that, like people being upset, people being excited. So now we're having to deal with all these different emotions in the workplace with one change, right? That's a lot to do as a leader, but that's why we're here. And that's why you're here today listening to this, and probably all the extra leadership development that you do is because you do care, right? We wouldn't be in this position, or you wouldn't log on to this free webinar, I feel like, if you didn't care about how you are acting and handling yourself as a leader. So, that is the one advantage we have over everyone else who chose not to listen to my webinar today. You're here today. So the first thing that we can do in creating this culture of change is challenge the premise. While that statement, that's how we've always done it, is easily understood, it's important to dig deeper. Ask about what we talked about before. When was this process originally implemented? Determine if it's been used for more than a year or 5 or 10 or more. Like, how long have you been doing this, right? If it's been a year, okay, maybe there's some, maybe you need to pivot a little bit. But I'm gonna be real honest. If you've been doing this for 10 years and it has not changed, you probably need to reinvent the wheel at this point, right? And if it's not a process to you that's been used since day one, be curious about when and why it became the go-to method, right? So if something was implemented a year ago and you're not sure why, let's dig into that, right? So with this and with this change, and to kind of help with that, loss and doing something different, let's dig into the why we were doing it in the first place and develop an understanding around that. The next thing you should do is learn through listening. In the first step, well, I guess now it's second step, is to ask questions. It's time to listen. One of the best qualities as a leader is the ability to listen, right? Hear what they're feeling, hear what they're saying. Tune into the reason behind decisions were made and the process were used. Learn the why behind those decisions. Understand that parts of that process still may be valuable, but take in as much as you can by listening to those who have used that current process for a while. If they've used that process for a while, they know the ins and the outs. And I promise you, if you take the opportunity to listen, they probably know some areas of improvement that the process can have, right? So listen. The next one, kind of share your vision. Bring everyone in, right? Again, we want to make sure when we're talking about the change, we're nurturing that process too. And that means being there for your employees, your peers, the members, again, whoever that change is going to impact, be there for them, share your vision. When I told my members two things in one day, I said, we're moving, yay. Here's when we're moving, and we're getting a new gym system. Of course, there's questions around it. My husband and I made ourselves and still make ourselves available to answer those questions and highlight the vision that we have for the new place and the vision that we have for the new gym software, right? And we're getting their buy-in, at least I hope so, while we're doing that, right? It's not just about what works for me and my husband and my staff, but it is what works for my members and making sure that they're being heard to in this process. Remember, the change is impacting them as well. And then the next thing to do is applaud the past. Okay. Let's not discredit those who have come before us. Let's not discredit what has been done before us, but applaud that. There have been individuals who have worked hard. If there are processes in place already, it is because someone came to, your workplace and said, here's what I think can do better, right? Applaud that they were willing to adapt and pivot and make a change, right? Again, that's a good opportunity to say, well, this works great for us. Let's keep doing that, but let's tweak this a little bit. Or how can we make that a little bit more engaging for our members, etc. You're likely in this situation heard important information about why they don't like the process or why they do. That's the time to celebrate, right? You don't want to completely throw everything out, all that hard work. Remember, we want to celebrate and applaud it. So rather than bulldoze what works well, show gratitude for those successes that were experienced because of that process used, and tweak it, pivot, right? I do like the phrase, there is no reason to reinvent the wheel. If something is working, by all means, I'm not asking you to do it completely different. I'm asking you just to evaluate, which is our next one. Evaluate what's working, what's not, and how can that be adapt to fit the needs of everyone involved at this point, right? And even that is going to be a change too. Even the slightest little shift is a change. So making sure that you're communicating that and recognizing that even though it's a small change for you, it still might be a big change for those around you. So having that communication, because again, it goes back to why a lot of people resist change, and that fear is at the top. We fear the unknown. We fear because we don't know how it's going to go, right? As a leader, you kind of recognize the mindset that they're in and recognize the mindset that you need to be in for them, right? It's kind of like the duck on a pond, right? They look calm, cool on the surface, but underneath, they're just paddling. That's me right now. You can't see my legs, but that's what I'm doing right now. So as leaders, you need to have that mentality. You need to recognize that mindset. I know it's hard, but you need to be able to recognize the mindset in the maybe the fear or the emotions that your staff or your employees are going through during this process. Okay. So, like I said, resistance, I don't want you to be like, oh, you can't say that's how we've always done it. No, right? That's going to come up. We're still probably going to be talking about this saying or phrase 5-10 years from now, right? Because we have done it this way. Why would we change it? But instead, if someone says that, dig, ask, okay, so if we've always done it this way, why do you think we've stayed committed to this process? What are the benefits to working in this way? What are the cons? And then what are your biggest concerns for making a change? Okay, let's ask the questions. Let's get it out in the open, right? The worst thing you can do is say, we're making a change. It starts Monday. See you later. John Kotter did a lot, right? We're talking about people here. It's important to realize those emotions and, really have the mind, but also the heart in mind as well, right? These are people that we're working with. These are their lives. This is their livelihood, right? This is how they make a living for their families. So, and use those sayings, those fixed mindset sayings as an opportunity to dive in with them, to make them feel valuable. Because when you ask them these questions, you're showing them that you care about their feedback. You're telling them that you care about them as an employee and that they have a voice and they have a say so. So it's not all bad. Use it as an opportunity as a leader to dig in and build rapport, build connection, acknowledge how they're feeling, right? Acknowledge how you're feeling. You don't have to hide it. Acknowledge that too. So you can also get support, but also they see you as being vulnerable in that process too. Okay. Now, kind of talking about let's take the risk, right? We were able to recognize the mindset you're in. We kind of talked about how to foster that culture of change. Now, you kind of just have to take the risk. You got to put yourself out there. So instead of that fixed mindset, have that growth mindset, right? So we establish new behaviors, new attitudes, and change around innovation. It fosters, a new way of thinking, right? So a growth mindset encourages reasonable risk-taking, okay? Reasonable risk-taking. Say that 5 times, right? For it to be true. Reasonable risk-taking, okay? I'm not just telling you to do all these crazy risks, but make sure that they are reasonable and that they make sense and that the intention is good, right? Talk about these risks or changes with your team. Y'all be in it together because that means if it fails, you're all in it together and you can report back and have a brain trust and say, okay, why didn't it work? Okay, maybe our cost was too high. Maybe we didn't market it the right way. Okay, if we didn't market it the right way, what are the other avenues that we can market it, right? By having this mindset, you eliminate, again, that fear of failure. It's a lot easier to fail with a team than it is all by yourself. It's really lonely failing by yourself. So incorporate your team, right? Break down barriers for your team. Allow them, right? A barrier might be that they don't feel safe or having the autonomy to take these risks. Break down that barrier. Have conversations. Be vulnerable with them and allow them to be vulnerable with you and let them know this is safe. If you fail, I'm not going to be mad. If you fail, let's learn from it. Let's take what we can from it and adapt it and pivot, right? And establish a healthy culture around feedback. feedback that allows participants to continue and learn and grow from each other. The way that I look at my staff, I have a staff and coaches of about 20. They all provide valuable feedback to me, and I ask for it, because if I am not providing a culture where they feel valued and they feel like they have the opportunity to thrive, then I'm not doing my job. I like feedback. Make sure it's continuous. Just because I own it, or they might be a coach, or they might be a front desk worker, it does not matter. Feedback is 360, it's all the way around. And that's because we have a culture of that in our facility, right? And it starts with you. Ask for the feedback, but the catch is, when you ask for the feedback and they give you feedback, you gotta take it into account and probably do it, right? So we have this continuous learning. It offers formal and informal opportunities for your team to maybe even pursue opportunities that they want to, right? It's, again, how can we build them up, right? How can I take away maybe what they're doing right now in this process that we want to change, and how can I put them or give them something else that brings them joy, value, or ultimately is their next step in their career path. For example, all of my front desk staff employees, I don't think they want to do that forever. I'm happy to have them for forever, but I always try to ask them what they want to do and how I can help them. Okay. If they leave me, it is because they are off to bigger and better things, for the most part. And one is in med school right now. One of them wants to work as a personal trainer. So guess what? She is doing that. We are making that transition for her because we value her so much. I'm willing to make a change for her for the front desk, so she has the opportunity to personally train clients, because that's what she wants to do, right? It allows them for those opportunities to do that. And you know what? If she puts herself out there, starts marketing, and she doesn't get a buy-in right off the bat, that's fine. We'll talk about and see what we can do better, right? But normalize this feedback, normalize these conversations, because the risks are worth it, right? As cliche as that sounds, the risk is worth it. It encourages reasonable risk taking, establishes a healthy culture with feedback, and encourages continuous learning. So let's try it. Maybe try it small, a reasonable risk. But over anything else, please recognize that change is emotional. People want to feel valued. Support your team, empathize with them, and then communicate with them. Just like I mentioned John Connor before, he's one of the most well-known voices in the topic of leadership and change. So his phrase is winning over the hearts and minds of people through the potential for change, right? So fear and resistance can't just be explained away, right? It's an emotional process for your team, and you have to consider that as a leader. You need to consider their heart, their emotions that are tied with it, and that they are change endeavors, that they can prepare and guide individuals through that change process too, right? So just remember that. And people need support. They need support through change. They need support through just about everything that they do during a workday. Believe it or not, give them that valuable feedback. Discuss with them, communicate with them, and try to best prepare them and yourself for changes or these pivots, right? If you need to rephrase the word change and say, instead of we're changing this today, be like, hey, we're going to reassess, we're going to reevaluate, and we're going to pivot. We're going to do things a little differently. It doesn't matter how you phrase it. All this still applies, okay? So let go of the familiar, challenge the status quo. Remember, failure is a friend, not a foe. Cultivate a diverse thinking by removing boundaries. create a safe space for experimentation, and then prove it with results. And let's just keep doing that, right? This shouldn't be a stop process. This should be a breathing, living process that we all need to do in regards to our work. What's working? What can we change? How can we do it better? And then how can I support those involved? So, with that being said, I'm coming to a wrap and a close with this. I appreciate every single one of you that have logged on with me today. Change is one of my most favorite things to talk about because it's just inevitable. We're all going to experience it. But hopefully this has given you some good tips or resources, or just kind of get you thinking a little bit of maybe being able to recognize when you yourself are in a fixed mindset and then how to adjust that to better support your staff. So with that, Bree, I will pass it back over to you, and thank you again.
Thank you, Chelsea. That was great information, great insight, and some good reflective exercises for us to do moving forward, even after this, because change is inevitable and change is something that is a living, breathing thing that is going to happen in your organization constantly. And so one of the things that Chelsea said that stuck out to me as she wrapped up was that people need support. So just think about that the next time you hear those phrases, like we've always done it this way, or if it's broke, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Because that person wants to give feedback. That person wants to be involved in the process, rather that's explaining to you why you don't need to fix it. People just want to feel supported and heard. So just considering that the next time you run into these frustrations with people talking about we've always done it this way. So thank you for joining us today. And please join us for our next webinar that will be the following Tuesday after Thanksgiving break. So that is going to be on toxic positivity. We are going to, that's going to be our final webinar for the 2024 series. We will kick off our 2025 series on January the 25th. And I will have more information and links to the full schedule coming out in our newsletter, as well as all of our social media platforms. So if you want this information, the recording for today's session, as well as the presentation, please go ahead and drop your emails in the chat. And as we collect those, please don't forget to give us some feedback. So there's a QR code on your screen. And if you would, please complete the survey. We have a few slots open for our 2025 schedule. So if there are any ideas or topics that come to mind, true business disruptors that you want to have us, do the research and legwork on and present the information to you, then we can certainly do that. Just send your ideas our way. But with that being said, thank you all again for joining us with this hour. We got you all out a few minutes early. So safe travels to anyone traveling over the holiday season. And I hope to see you all next month for Toxic Positivity. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.